the StarCityGames.com Season 1 Invitational in Roanoke, part of the SCG Tour brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside our former reigning Invitational champion, Jacob Baugh. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
You've got to hold that title for a good 6 months, but now we're here in Roanoke and someone else is coming for the title.
Yeah.
You, though, are going to try to do a back-to-back.
Yeah, that's for sure what I want to do.
And we're here, and we're talking about Standard, and you're playing the white-blue Monument deck.
Yes, sir.
And we're kind of in a brand new Standard format. No one's really got to play the format where Aetherworks Marvel didn't exist.
Yeah.
You, of course, won the Invitational behind a little Aetherworks Marvel. So I'm sure you're a little off and on that banning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing it's gone. I would have almost rather seen a format without Ulamog than a format without Marvel, just to see how that feels. But it was probably right just to pull the trigger and get rid of it. Most people weren't having fun with the spins and everything, so, and the very inconsistency of that deck that people even playing it felt. So it just probably wasn't a good thing for the game.
That's right. Without that deck in the format, though, the format kind of gets wide open again. People are looking to try new strategies. You know, we have a new set coming, but this deck in particular we've seen kind of pop up on Magic Online in the last couple of weeks. Take us through this white-blue Monument deck and what this deck's trying to do.
So I had been testing the mono-white Monument deck. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. If you're already playing anywhere on MTGO, it's pretty much everywhere and rampant. It's pretty great using like Aeronaut bouncing itself, just triggering, get a bunch of tokens. But the cards themselves are not good by like just doing a normal aggro plan, which is why I kind of moved away from it when I saw this deck. It was also a 5-0 daily deck, popped up on Wednesday, and a few of my teammates tested the deck a little bit, and we felt it was just a better version of the mono white version. So we just pulled the trigger and played it with minimal testing, which I don't really like to do normally, but it's definitely felt really good. The counter spells add a lot of dynamics to the cards you lose to, like Guardian Glory Bringers and stuff like that. Just feels great with rebukes, and having the Dusk is just so good in this meta right now. Everyone's just trying to play 3 power creatures on 3, and you just get to clear everything out on 4 or 5.
And if you've got reps with the mono white version, I'm sure this isn't that far of a stretch from that deck.
Yeah, it's much more flashy than that one, but it's still like the same animal. You don't do as much super grinding like that one does with the arrow, not the guy that bounces another permanent when you enter the battlefield. But it still does the same kind of animal with between Militia Captain making tokens and Monument making tokens, and then Avacyn to just make favorable trades at every point. It's just really great. So.
All right, so we'll go over the threats here. We have Thraben Inspector, just the all-star card that it is, banning everything from humans to vehicles, you name it.
Yeah, it's just another creature to go out early. There's really this deck doesn't want to be super aggressive. It just wants to accrue value and land a monument and do great stuff. So
then we start going wide with Handweaver Militia Captain. You've got Selfless Spirit that kind of protects the team when you need it. And then we've got Bygone Bishop, another card that didn't see a ton of play, but in this strategy, when you're bouncing things and playing a bunch of creatures, investigating becomes real.
It's much better in the other deck, but it's still a very good threat for when you don't have Monument to just accrue even more value from this deck, because majority of your creatures trigger it, and it's just what you want to like have like low, cheap flyers that you can play and then trigger themselves. It's the whole point of this costing 1 less mana is what makes it a completely different animal, because you can easily double spell when you have a Monument and just get value immediately, when it was really hard to do that before in the decks that wanted to play it. So just the power of Protector's Monument coming
Believe it or not, 2 mana way better than 3 mana when it's on a creature. All right, and then we have Spell Queller here. You know, you mentioned that as part of the blue splash. This is what allows you to play that flash game. And then you have more of that flash elements here with, you know, Metallic Rebuke, Cast Out. Cast Out is kind of your removal spell of choice. And then you even have stuff like Avacyn when you go up the curve.
Being able to play Avacyn on 4 after you Monument is a real deal as well. And then just getting the token with the Avacyn even changes the math even so much more when you actually have that draw. It's unreal, like curving those 2 cards into each other and just destroying their whatever board your opponent has assembled at that point. So, and then you have cheap counter spells. This card works so well with Monument. Monument doesn't matter if you tap it, so that's nice. And then the deck accrues a bunch of clues through Thraben Inspector and Bygone Bishop. That is just a very cheap counter spell that you can normally double spell with your creatures costing so low with the Monument reducing them.
Yeah, you could easily just have Thraben Inspector Monument, and then all you need is a blue mana. You've got your clue and your Monument to tap, and then you've got a counter spell. That seems very good. So I guess it's safe to say the Monument is the most important part of this deck. That's why you have 4 copies of a legendary card.
Yeah, it feels very overpowered when it has Monument on 3, and pretty good when it doesn't. The power of Dust On in this format, just the way the decks have been shaping up and everyone's going, Dust On just feels like the thing I wanted to be doing, so I played this deck.
Right, so the other, we will talk about that more in depth now.
Yeah.
The Amonkhet Aftermath card here, when it's in your graveyard, you get all of your creatures except Avacyn back, which is pretty good. And then, like you said, you're trying to fight all these decks like Teamer Energy and things like that are just playing creatures 3, 4, 5, trying to run you over with
all their 3-drops have 3 power, and most of the 2-drops get bigger, and you just kill them all in 1 card, and you do nothing to your board. It's one-sided Wrath of God, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And then it just, in the late game, you just, whatever removal they threw at your stuff, or whatever you trade off, you just get a buyback in the late game, and it's just absurd how good it is in this deck. So
is that the real strength of the deck, that it can go wide, but it's also absurdly resilient? Because every card I see in this deck is just redundancy, more creatures, more cards, just that over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And then we have a few fun-ofs, but that's basically the gist of the deck.
Right, we got Cloudblazer and Angel and Inventions. These are your fun-ofs, I guess, as you put it. Why are these cards in here?
So we wanted something for the mirror. We originally had 2 Cloudblazers and 3 Avacyns, but as our 5s. But we ended up wanting something for the mirror, and this card breaks up the mirror very well, because you just get a bunch of 1/1s and you sit there and stare at each other, and just Selfless Spirit turns it up. But this card lets you turn all your 1/1s into 2/2s and just swing the game, and it still doesn't make your majority of your creatures die to dawn, which is nice because it's still only a 2/1 and it makes 2/2s, so it's the perfect kind of creature for this deck. So it was just something we added at the last minute because we thought the deck would be well worth it.
So when the deck is not quote unquote doing its thing with Monument, how does the deck function? Is it a feasible aggro plan? Is that something you can actually do?
Yeah, it's really just you play creature. You don't really get aggressive with it. You just try and get as far into late game as possible. You just play super defensive because your late game is actually better than everyone else's late game. And you can trade your counter spells and your spell callers and just secure clues, and just not dying is all you do in the early game. And if you ever get a flip a Militia Captain, you can just not die forever, pretty much. So
yeah, that seems pretty good.
Yeah.
You also, we've got Ormondal waiting in the wings here in this deck, and this deck gets to play a lot of copies of these of this land, so you're going to have way more access to that. Also, actually able to make Ormondal pretty regularly. This kind of looks like the old green-white tokens from way back when.
We're looking with trying to do that kind of same game plan, which is just jam Avacyns and make a bunch of crappy guys and throw them away. So.
All right. What's in the sideboard? I didn't get it out here, but what are the top cards, and what are you kind of looking to fight with your sideboard?
It's kind of just a bunch more 2-ofs to swap out our 2-ofs that are in our main deck, to be fair. Like hedging our bets with Stasis Snares instead of cast outs, switching in negates, into spells, that kind of stuff like that. Additional top-end creatures. I also have some Angel of the one that removes something here.
Sanctions?
Angel of Sanctions to swap out for our 5s when we want more removal threats, and then some of the Fairground Warden. Yeah, some of those guys. That's kind of pretty much it.
So you kind of got a mix and match of creatures. You're not really changing your game plan. You're just changing the creatures for different utility creatures.
Yeah, and then a few artifact enchantment removal.
So where do you see this deck in the meta? There hasn't been a ton of games and a ton of tournaments or anything with this exact format, but where do you see this shaping up against the big decks, black-green, vehicles, Teamer Energy, and maybe the control decks and zombies?
So how we felt, the Mardu matchup is actually pretty even. Dust On is at its worst in that matchup, so that's why you can't just jam all 4 of them in your deck. But other than that, Dusk just lines up so well against those decks because they're all just trying to go wide and huge, and you just get to clear their board and then just bury them in cards in the late game. So it feels like it's definitely going to be contender post-rotation, which I think is a reason why we're pretty much trying to work on it. We got a lot of people going to the Pro Tour and want to start working on this format. So,
all right. Is it weak to anything? Because when Dusk is so good against every deck that you mentioned, it seems like you're going to have a pretty good slate here.
Yeah, we didn't find anything in the current 4 top decks like Zombies, Mardu, Green Black, and Energy that was a poor matchup. So we certainly thought some of the control decks we don't really play that much against. But you certainly have a lot of ability to go wide against that deck, so I feel like it has to be fine. Like even Dustodon isn't blank. You just cast it as a 4-mana do nothing, and then you just wait 4 to 5 mana spell.
That's pretty good because you have your other spell on the second half.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're just now in the standard portion of things. A couple of members of Card Hoarder on this deck. What are your expectations for the weekend?
Hopefully pull out a top 8, but I mean I like my modern deck a lot. So, and then this deck I feel is really great. So we'll see how it works out.
All right. You've already got one token.
Yeah.
If you get to pull off the magical back-to-back, have you thought about it yet, or is it just kind of?
I have no idea what I would choose. Probably some sort of set. Maybe even go further to Issalon because we got cards spoiled for that. Or
snipe it in advance.
Early,
That's pretty good. All right, Jacob, this deck looks awesome. Thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Roanoke.